When you hear the word goulash, you may instantly think Hungarian goulash, which is more like a stew, or you might think American goulash, which is a pasta dish made with ground beef. Well, I'm gonna throw another twist in there. I'm gonna make a Southwestern American goulash with a cornbread topping, and it's absolutely delicious and super easy to make. Welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today we're gonna make an American style goulash with a Southwestern flair. So an American style goulash is a pasta dish, usually made with elbow macaroni, which we are gonna use today. And it's usually with a sauce, like a tomato-based sauce that has some different seasonings. Now, how people season it is totally up to them, but usually it's leaning towards Italian type of seasonings. It's absolutely delicious. But I thought, let's make it a little bit different. And then let's take it one step further and let's put a cornbread topping on top. And that is exactly what we're gonna do. And this is a dump and go, and it is really easy to do. First thing we wanna do is get our ground beef and our onions sauteing. So I'm gonna turn the Ninja Foodi on, lift up that lid, go to sear saute, high as what you want, and we're gonna let that heat up. I have 1 pound of ground beef here. This is 80-20, so I'm not adding any oil because we're not gonna drain it afterwards. I like the extra grease to be in the dish because it adds flavor. If you don't want it in there, you can saute and drain. Perfectly fine, it's not gonna affect the recipe. Or you could use a leaner cut, or you can use turkey. You know, it would be absolutely fine with either of those. Then I have 1 medium-sized onion, which is about 1.5 cups of diced onion. And they're diced, well, this one's not even diced, you know, that's how particular I am in this recipe. But they're about, I would say, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch diced, probably on the 1/2 inch side. Then we have a can of fire roasted tomatoes, which I get this question a lot. They are not spicy, okay? They are just roasted tomatoes. So if you threw tomatoes over an open, flame outside on your grill, you would have fire roasted tomatoes. They are not spicy, so don't worry about that. But now you could get them, I think, with garlic, and sometimes they might have additives that make them spicy. But plain fire roasted tomatoes are not spicy, but they add a ton of flavor. Then we're gonna use 1.5 cups of corn. I'm using 1 can that I drained, but you could use frozen corn. Be perfectly fine. Just 1.5 cups or I think it's 14-ounce can. 8 ounces of elbow macaroni. And then we have our pepper blend. This is optional or totally up to you, whatever you want to do. I have 1 green pepper, and then I have 4 little small peppers, those little sweet peppers that I use. So these are all sweet peppers. And you could put in spicy peppers if you wanted. That would be perfectly fine. We're not going to add those in, though, when we pressure cook. We're going to wait so that they don't get mushy and just fall apart. All right, now before we get to our spice blend, which is like the star of the show, I think, we're gonna go ahead and put in our ground beef to start sauteing. So go ahead and put that in there. And kind of break it up a little bit. And I'm gonna put my onions in. Now I go ahead and put all the onions in now, but if you wanted a little bit of a, less done onion, you could reserve half of them and put them in when we put the peppers in. That would be fine. But when I tested the recipe, I just dumped them all in and it was fine. All right, so let's go over the spice blend now. We have 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of fine grind sea salt, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, not salt, 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, again, not salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of chipotle powder. Now that is spicy, so if you don't like spice, omit it. You can add it at the end if you want, or you can use some hot sauce, on top if you want. But this, I thought, was absolutely a fantastic blend and was perfectly spicy without being too spicy. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and sprinkle that on and then just saute it for just a few minutes. You don't have to get all the ground beef done. It's gonna finish cooking in the pressure cook time, so don't worry about that. Just saute it for a few minutes, then we're gonna add the rest of our ingredients and go under pressure. All right, that looks good. So it was only about 2.5 minutes. I see some pink in there. I'm not worried about it. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine because we're gonna pressure cook. All right, now we're gonna deglaze with some liquid. I'm using 2 cups of beef stock, and that is our thin liquid. And we're gonna go ahead and just, on the bottom, just kind of move it around to make sure that we don't have any of that ground beef or onions stuck to the bottom. That can trigger the water notice. So we want to make sure that we go around pretty well and scrape the bottom. All right, that looks good. Now the rest is just dump and go. So we're gonna go ahead and put in our fire roasted tomatoes, and those have the juice. I did not drain them. Put in our corn. Put in our elbow macaroni. Give it a stir and try to get the macaroni under the liquid, which shouldn't really be very hard because there's plenty of liquid in there. So as much as you can, get that macaroni under the liquid so it cooks evenly. It's already pretty. All right, perfect. Now we're gonna put the pressure lid on, and we're gonna go under pressure, high pressure, for 3 minutes. So if you don't know, line up your arrows there, and then you can put your pressure lid on. Make sure you turn the valve in the back to the seal position. Switch over to pressure cooking. High is what we want. We only wanna go 3 minutes, and we're gonna hit the start button. Now it's gonna take, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 minutes to come up to pressure. We'll pressure cook for 3 minutes, and then we will do an immediate release. So now is the time to start getting your ingredients ready to make your cornbread topping if you want to make that. You don't wanna make the cornbread topping up too far ahead of time because you don't want it to sit with the baking powder in there. It starts to kind of work already, and then it won't give you the rise that you want in the light, fluffy cornbread on top. So now's a good time though to go measure out those ingredients and start to prepare your cornbread topping. And that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So I will show you exactly how to make it. You just need a bowl and a couple of ingredients. All right, so it took about 10 or 11 minutes for the pot to go under pressure, so we only have 2 minutes left. I'm gonna go ahead and whisk together my dry ingredients, and then we're gonna whip up this cornbread topping. So what I have here is 1.5 cups of cornmeal, 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, put that in, 1/2 teaspoon of fine grind sea salt. If you're using table salt, I would just use a 1/4 teaspoon. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, put that in. And I should have, oh, let me use this little whisk. I think it'll work better. Yeah, there we go. And then just whisk those ingredients together until they're combined. That disperses the salt and the baking powder throughout and just makes it a little bit easier when you go to whisk it all together. You could also whisk in the sugar, but I'm gonna do that because my bowl's so full. I'm gonna do that with the eggs, it'll be fine. So I have 2 room temperature large eggs, and to that I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of buttermilk. Kind of whisk that up a little bit. Then we're gonna add 1/4 cup of white sugar. Now, if you don't want your cornbread sweet at all, you don't have to add that in, it's perfectly fine. But I like mine on the sweet side. All right, now before I add in the butter, because I just melted this in the microwave, and it may be a little bit too hot and it might start to cook the eggs. All right, 3 minutes is up, do an immediate release. I'm gonna add in some of this dry mixture. All right, the pressure's almost released. It's taken a good amount of time because there was a lot of steam in there. One thing I want to say is if you are using a different type of pasta like a penne, instead of the elbows, you might want to go up on the time to 4 minutes. They take a little bit longer to cook usually. All right, once the pin is dropped, you can open up the lid, do that away from you because it is going to be extremely steamy. And then you're gonna see your pot of Southwestern goulash. To that, we're gonna add in those peppers, some of which are diced and some of which are in rounds. That makes no difference how you cut them. Give it a nice stir here. It's beautiful, beautiful. Then of course you need to add in some cheese. So I'm gonna add in a Mexican blend, which is pre-shredded, a 1/2 cup. You could put more in if you wanted. There's no rules there. You could even stop right now if you wanted. You could just put cheese and you could put a panko topping on if you wanted. It would be perfectly fine. But I thought that this went really well with the cornbread topping. So that's what I'm gonna do. So now what I do is just sort of spread out the mixture here so that we have a nice even layer. Try to get your peppers down into the heat of the mixture so that they do soften enough. You don't want them on the very top. So I'm just gonna do that, take a second to do that. Or they'll be pretty crunchy. So they're in that heated mixture. They're gonna soften in the time that we bake. And that looks good enough. Look at how beautiful that is. All right, now you're just gonna pour your cornbread topping on top. Or you know what you could do? Let me do it a different way. I think it's gonna be easier. Let me scoop it on. And the reason why I'm gonna do that is because I think it's gonna be easier for you guys if you have a scoop. I used to have a bigger one because you can get it kind of spread out more evenly if you do that because it's already thickened up, you see? It's not a real wet batter. And you may or may not like this as an actual cornbread. It goes really well on the top of this, but I haven't actually tried it just to bake it in the oven as a cornbread. So just go around like that. It's a thin layer. See, what I was thinking is if I dumped it on and then started to spread it, I think you're gonna pull in some of the pasta and stuff. I just think this gives you a little bit more control over where you put it and everything. So there we go. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to put the cheese in. I put a 1/2 cup of cheese in this usually, and I forgot. Oh well, one side's gonna have cheese and one side isn't. That's the way it goes. Or I could have put it on top, but I think what would have happened is it would have kind of burned the cheese. So anyway, these are the things that happen. I got ahead of myself and didn't put it in. So you want to put a 1/2 cup of the shredded cheese into your cornbread mixture before you put it on top. There we go. I always have to mess up once in a video, don't I? I could never just nail it. I always make one goof. Oh well. Real life. Now you don't want to try to double this either because you think you want a thicker cornbread topping. Don't do that. It won't cook all the way. You'll have a mushy bottom. All right, that looks good. Just enough of the batter to do a nice thin coating on top. Everything looks really good. All right, now we're gonna lower the crisping lid. We're gonna select the air crisp function. We wanna go to 325 for 15 minutes. Yes, it looks done. Definitely looks done. So when I feel it, it's nice and firm. It's hot too, but it looks really, really good. I see a couple of burnt areas. I think that's where some onions got up there. All right, we're ready to dig in. Moment of truth. Is it all the way done? It's hot. All right, it looks delicious. I made kind of a mess though. Sorry about that, but it absolutely looks amazing. Looks so good. So let's taste it because that's the important part. Wow. Oh my gosh. The flavors are amazing. It's not spicy. It's not spicy at all. Oh my gosh. This is so good. I like a little spice though. So I'm gonna add a little bit of spice and then we're gonna taste that cornbread. Yummy. All right, let's dig into the cornbread here. Looks good, looks really good. Now the cornbread is really meant to be eaten with the dish, but I'm gonna taste it just by itself, just to see. I made it once and it was a little too salty, so I've adjusted that. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. It's really a cornbread, so it's not overly floury or anything like that. Really, really good with this dish. Let's make sure we get some of that spice. In fact, let me add a little bit to the cornbread. You could even put jalapeno peppers in that cornbread if you wanted. That would be good too, if you like spice. All right, let's go. Yeah. The perfect bite. Oh my gosh. This is so amazing. With or without the cornbread topping, and it's really good with a little bit of Cholula on there. Oh my gosh, that's my favorite hot sauce, but use whatever you like. So this is something that you can really get creative with. You can omit the corn, omit the tomatoes, double up on the corn. You can put jalapeno peppers in there. Do anything that you want. Just keep the liquid amounts the same so you have a good consistency of, or good pasta to liquid ratio, and you won't have a soupy mess. Leave the cornbread off, put it on, whatever you want to do. Make it yours, make it delicious, and keep it real.